Excel lets you summarize your data quickly, but the real power of a pivot table comes when you want to rearrange your data dynamically. A task that would take several minutes if done by hand takes just a few seconds when you summarize your data in a pivot table. The row headers and column headers provide the basic structure for your pivot table. In this case, my rows are the months, January through December, and the columns are the two companies, Firm A and Firm B, for which I have data. If I wanted to, I could change my data layout so that the companies provided the headers for the rows, and the months provided the values for the column labels. To do that, I can go into the PivotTable field list task pane, and then in the lower part of the field list, I can change the position of the labels by dragging them from one area to another. So for example, I can drag company to the row labels area and month to the column labels area. As I desired, the companies provide the values for the rows, and the months provide the values for the columns. If I want to divide my data up a little bit more to provide more detail as opposed to the summary that I have right now, then I can add second rows or column headers to create those subdivisions. So for example, let's return the pivot table to its original position where I have month in the row area and company in the column area. Let's say that I want to divide my months into quarters. To do that, I would drag the quarter field down to the top of the row labels area, and you can see a thin bluish gray line that appears just above the month header here in the row labels area. If I were to drag quarter below month, then the line appears below it indicating its position, but I'll put quarter above month, and when I release the left mouse button, then you see that the data is arranged first by quarter and then by month. If I were to reverse the order of those two labels by putting quarter below month, then we would have January, which belongs in quarter one, February, which belongs in quarter one, and so on. That arrangement doesn't make much sense, so I'll put it back and have the months arranged by quarter for January, February, March, quarter one, April, May, June, quarter two, and so on. If I want, I can add another layer. In this case, I'll use the year field, and I will put it above quarter in the row labels area. And again, you can see the line when it will be dropped. So here we have quarter one for 2009, quarter two, and so on. And if I use my mouse scroll wheel to move down, we'll see the same data for 2010. There's one other thing about pivoting a pivot table that I'd like to show you, and that is how to defer the layout updates when you're pivoting. So let's say that you have an extremely large data set. It could be tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of rows, or they could be a data set that you're connecting to over a network, and the network connection might be slow for some reason. If that's the case, then you can do what's called deferring the layout update. To do that, at the bottom of the pivot table field list, check the Defer Layout Update box, and then make your changes. So let's say, for example, that I want to take out month, and then also take out quarter. Now you notice that the pivot table hasn't changed to reflect my update. When I'm ready, and I've made all the changes I want to make, click the Update button, and Excel updates the pivot table, and I will drag the scroll bar up so that you can see the pivot table in its new state, which is year providing the value for the row labels and company providing the value for the column labels. Changing a pivot table's arrangement shifts the data's emphasis, which enables you to examine the data from different perspectives quickly and easily.